Hi, my name is Brian Johnson, and I'm one of the pastors at Williamsburg United Methodist Church, and this is our weekly midweek video. And yes, I know for the second time in several weeks I'm wearing a Baltimore Orioles jersey, but they have a doubleheader today, and you got to represent your team sometimes. But today we're not actually talking about the Baltimore Orioles and their middling season so far. We're talking about the book of Acts. We are continuing our journey through the book of Acts during our current sermon series and our Bible studies. And today I want to talk about something that happens in Acts chapter 12, something that we're not going to get to in one of our sermons. In Acts chapter 12, we have this incident where King Herod, the same King Herod who is involved in the death of Jesus, King Herod shows up in chapter 12 of the book of Acts. And he realizes that he can be popular with some of the religious elites, the religious establishment, if he does violence against the Christians. And so he kills the Apostle James, the brother of John, one of Jesus's three closest followers, an early leader of the early church. Herod puts James to death. And then soon after, we hear a story about how Herod was involved in a variety of political negotiations, and he didn't stand up against some idolatry that happened, and eventually he dies. And he dies a pretty ugly death in the book of Acts. He's eaten by worms, and then he dies, which sounds like the wrong order and entirely unpleasant. It's a weird story in the book of Acts, but I think part of what it's doing is reminding us that the evil we face in this world does not last forever. The violence and the hatred and the folks who are powerful doing harm to others, standing up against, or folks who are doing evil and standing against the way of love and the way of justice and the way of peace, the way of God's crucified and resurrected one, Jesus Christ, God with us. The people who are standing against goodness, who are spreading hatred, do not get the final say. Eventually, everything in this world, human folks, we come to an end. The only person who has the only entity with a timeline that goes on and on and on is God. Nations will come to an end. Rulers and powers will fall. All of us in our good works and our evil works will eventually turn to dust. And that is good news in the book of Acts, because for a church that was suffering at the hand of violent powers that sought to do it harm, that didn't care about the way of love and mercy and grace and life, it was a reminder for the first people reading the book of Acts that the evils they faced were not permanent. It's a word for us. When you feel like the world is set against you, when you feel like there is no hope for tomorrow, remember that the evils we face are not permanent. The harm that we see being done is not permanent. That no matter how intractable the brokenness in this world seems, it is dust when compared to God. The only thing that is eternal is the God who is crucified and risen for us, who raises Jesus Christ from the dead, the God who is at work amongst us in and through the power of the Holy Spirit. That God, Father, Son, and Holy Spirit, is eternal. And that God is by nature love, which means that in the end, love wins. And so, when you feel like you are stuck facing something like King Herod, who was doing harm to the church, when you are stuck facing some evil or pain that doesn't seem like it can go away, remember that in the end, God wins. God has already won. The evils shall perish, and goodness shall triumph. That's the good news. Peace. You are loved.